So first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to present this paper. I'm very excited to share our results. This paper was written and the experiment was conducted in the context of the current COVID-19 pandemic. And it concerns the effect of face mask use on behavior, more specifically on distancing. So you might be wondering, why is this relevant in November, when face mask use is already universal, and you can also say that it's societal norm to use face masks in public, and in most places, in many settings, it's mandatory. So the reason is that this study concerns a certain dimension of face wearing and a certain effect of face mask wearing. There was a claim or also made by the World Health Organization, but also cited by many other governments. Let me cite: the use of a medical mask in the community may create a false sense of security with neglect of other essential measures such as hygiene practices and physical distancing. Okay, so the claim of the WHO is that the use of masks jeopardizes other preventive efforts, and it makes people reckless, and they take excess risk. And initially, it was in the framework of WHO's claim that and advice not to use face masks by the general public in general. But nevertheless, this line was never deleted from WHO's guidelines, so it's still there. They still claim that face masks create a false sense of security, which when we started to work on this, it sounded a bit speculative to us, and they didn't make it clear what this claim is based on. Okay, so we try to figure out if this is true, where the claim comes from, and if there is any sound argument and evidence behind this. So the story comes from the so-called risk compensation phenomena. So the risk compensation hypothesis is the following: in decision making under risk, if risk is determined by multiple factors, certain factors that are exogenous to the individual, and certain measures that are set by the individual, then higher exogenous effort induces lower endogenous effort. In other words, if there is some kind of government measure or that others mitigate risk, I will lower my effort. Okay, so at first this might sound a bit counterintuitive, but nevertheless there is some evidence that in some circumstances this is the case. So there were multiple tests and empirical studies on this. So the most famous ones concern the effect of bicycle helmets. So the story is something like this: if the government mandates the use of bicycle helmets, that is an exogenous measure. You have to wear the helmet. Then this will make you drive more recklessly. You will violate more traffic rules. You don't care about the circumstances that much. There were other tests in terms of HIV virus prevention, seatbelt laws, etc. So the results are not consistent. So some studies found support for the hypothesis, some rejected it. Now, parallel to our studies, and also we did studies ourselves, there is no evidence in the context of the pandemic in favor of risk compensation. So there were two studies, one by us, that is the same design that I will present today, that using a field experiment that we conducted in April, that we found that mask use increases distancing between people. There was a slightly similar study in movement patterns on pavements from Italy, with very low risk environment. And there was another study in Germany in which they found that mask mandates do not affect community mobility. In other words, it did not induce more moving out from home, more socializing. Okay, so there's no supporting evidence so far. Let me briefly tell you the setting in which we conducted this experiment. Okay, so our timeline starts with the beginning of restrictions. Everything that I present here refers to Berlin, where we conducted the study. Okay, so the first data and second data collection happened during the first wave of the pandemic. This timeline starts with the beginning of strict restrictions in Berlin, similar to many other countries. There were very strict restriction on movement. The government didn't explicitly call it a lockdown, but there were restrictions of movement. Shops closed. There were tight restrictions, but no mandate to wear face masks. We collected the first round of the data collection. That was our first study I just cited, in which we found that face mask increase distancing. This happened in April. After this, the government made wearing masks mandatory in multiple settings, including public transportations and inside shops. We collected the data in front of stores. Then reopenings occurred, and then we carried out the second round of data collection. We were curious how the different setting affects our treatment effect. We were curious if a different context and this decision making setting affects how people react to masks in general. So let me explain what we did exactly. So as I said, the starting claim of the World Health Organization was something like this: community use of masks create false sense of security, right? So if you think about this, there can be two things that affect your behavior. You're, for instance, mandated to wear a mask yourself, or you observe that others do. So what we did is that we carried out an intervention in which we manipulated what subjects saw in front of them, and this is what we try to identify. What is the effect of others wearing masks on subjects' behavior? Okay, so we conducted a field experiment in which we joined waiting lines in front of stores. Okay, so it looks like this. There is a store, post office, supermarket, or drugstore. There is a line in front of it because of the restrictions. Such lines were common sight in the city, also in April and in May. So in places where people formed a waiting line in front of the store, we joined these lines, stood 150 centimeters away from the last person in line. Okay, so 150 centimeter was and still is the general recommendation of the local health authority, the Robert Koch Institute, that should be kept between people, right? In the United States, the equivalent recommendation is 6 feet. We were waiting in the line until the next person arrived, and we measured the distance they kept from us. Okay, in order to measure, we used a mobile device. Same most newer mobile devices, smartphones. There is a pre-installed augmented reality app by which you can measure distances on the ground. So what we did is that we measured the closest distance between the subjects and ours using the closest points of our shoes. Okay, so this yields a measurement of distance with 1 centimeter precision. So this is our distance variable. What we are interested in is how our intervention affects whether we are wearing a mask or not, how it affects the distance kept by the subject. Okay, so the procedure was like this. So the person arrived. We measured the distance. So one session looked like this. One of us, so one experimenter, predetermined how many observations he or she wanted to take. So one observation is one person. This is a between subject design. Okay, so the arrival here here is random. In a session, from this even number of observations, half of them was carried out with mask and half of them without mask, right? So let's say the predetermined number is 10 for a longer run. This is realistic in one go. We took 5 measurements with mask, 5 measurements without mask. Whether we started with or without mask, we decided by using a fair coin. And then when we reached the desired number of observations, we left the location. Okay, so I hope the setting is rather clear. We made 480 observations. So there were 2 periods, April and May, before and after the mask mandate in stores, not in front of stores. In front of stores, there were just different recommendations. There was just recommendation regarding distance. In the stores in May, in the second period, there was mask mandate. In April, there wasn't. There were four of us, and in both periods, each of us made 60 observations. Okay, so in both periods, we have 240 observations between subject design. So what we recorded as the main variable of interest, distance. We recorded a guest age, gender, whether the subject arrived with other people. We distinguished between children and adults. Whether they were wearing a face mask themselves. The number of people in line in front of us. So basically a number of people outside. And for May, the number of stores open within a 50-meter radius that were not allowed to open in April in the first period. This was basically a proxy of other relaxation measures that occurred in May compared to the conditions in May compared to the conditions in April. Okay, so we did this twice in both periods. We have 240 observations. Okay, this is what we look like. So so imagine there were 4 experimenters. All of them co-authors of the study. When in one condition we were no face mask, in the other one we did. We uniformly use white FFP2 face masks. So to those who know the other standard, this is equivalent of an N95 respirator. That was the most commonly available face mask at the time for first observations in April. We did the experiment in Berlin. So the red dots represent the locations near our place of residence because of legal restrictions. We did this in front of post offices, drugstores, and supermarkets. We used the same locations in both periods, and 4 of us used different locations. There was no overlap. We live in different neighborhoods. Okay, so both this is the number of observations that we had. And in our model with OLAS, we wanted to measure the effect of face masks, the effect of the policy changes. So basically the difference between the 2 periods, the relevant interaction term, and the effect of face masks worn by the subjects. So let me present you the hypothesis that we work with, right? So we registered this hypothesis after the first period. So we already knew that in April, there was a significant effect of the mask worn by the experimenters on distance capped. So our story that we had before, that masks do not provide additional information anymore. So that without with mask before and after the mask mandate, this distance cap should be the same. On the other hand, because after the mandate, everyone carries a mask with them. That gives an additional cue, so that after the mandate, if we don't wear our mask, they are still reminded that there is a pandemic, distance keeping is important. Where we got the idea from, that in our first study we also had an online survey in which we found that there are other facts that might play a role, like a reminder of fact, respect, etc. If everyone carries a mask, then there should be no effect on whether we are wearing a mask or not. This is hypothesis 2. And we also hypothesized that because more people would wear a mask, the sample in the second period, those who wear a mask and those who don't, as not sufficiently, not very different. So, we hypothesized that in the second period, those who wore and those who did not wear a mask kept same distance on average. So let me after this, let me move on to the results. Okay, so hypothesis one was rejected, right? So we hypothesized that in the mask condition in the second period, we would observe the same distances, because under both conditions there is a cue to keep distance. Now, if we only consider the subsample in both before and after the mandate in which they wear a mask, we find that in the second period the distances kept are shorter, significantly shorter. In the other subset, so the set of observations before and after the mandate, in which we were not wearing a mask, the distance is not negative, but not significantly different in the second period. Now we hypothesize a positive effect. So this is not the case. Now, if we explore this a little bit further and we use the pool sample, so all observations, we find that there is no difference in the effect of mask on the distance kept. So in both periods, there is a significant positive effect on mask. So if we wore a mask in both periods, on average, subjects kept a larger distance from us, right? So this contradicts the false sense of security or risk compensation hypothesis. Contradicts, but let us not forget, we do not test directly the risk compensation hypothesis, because there are many things playing a role here. But all that we can say is that masks do not have the hypothesized negative effect claimed by health authorities. The effect that we find is the opposite. So there's a positive effect, and this is not different in the two periods. Now, when it comes to hypothesis 3, we do not reject it. We find some support that after the mandate there is no difference in behavior between people who wore or who did not wear a mask. Right? Actually, what happened is that is what we expected. The percentage of subjects who wore a mask increased from 17% in April to 40% in May. And as you can see, and it's also confirmed by a two-sided t-test, in the first period, must subjects keep a larger distance from us, while in May, after the mandate, when actually everyone has a mask with them, just some people wear it also outside in the waiting line, some people don't. There is no difference between the two subsamples, right? Right. So it's a possible explanation is because more people wear it and everyone has a mask. It does not convey any does not explain much about the subject if they wear a mask outside or not.
Gyula, you have like 2 more minutes.
Sorry?
You have 2 more minutes.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the negative effect of policies and distancing, right? So many things happen between the two observational periods. We pre-registered another variable. I would like to highlight this. We also had an auxiliary variable online search for coronavirus that didn't explain much. I would like to highlight specification 4. If we also include the variable, the newly opened stores in this specification with the full sample, then we find that the period effect vanishes, and the difference between the two periods is well explained by the reopening of stores. So this hints in the direction that that other relaxation measures might drive the difference between the two periods. Nevertheless, the mask effect remains positive. Now another additional result, that if you're wondering if our conclusions depend on the model specifications or the recommendations by the health authorities, you can find that in this pooled sample, this is the exact cumulative distribution function of distances with and without mask for both periods. You can find that there is a clear right shift. There is the distribution of distances with mask stochastically dominates the other one. In other words, it doesn't matter how you defined compliance with what threshold, the compliance ratio will be larger if subjects face someone wearing a mask. So this is illustrated by this cumulative distribution function. So if I now I need to wrap it up. As a conclusion, we can say that the mask effect on distancing is significantly positive. This is not different in the two periods, so we find evidence of positive effect on face mask on distancing. There is difference between the two periods that can be due to different circumstances, but we find evidence that the difference is consistent with that relaxing measures influenced distancing, and this is why we find a drop in distancing between the two periods. So again, we find no evidence on risk compensation, or on the contrary. We also had a technical appendix in the paper. I just briefly wanna talk about this. The risk compensation model written by Blomqvist in 1986 has some technical assumptions that imply risk compensation, and one of them is that the cross derivative of the cost of effort and the exogenous efforts is non-negative. In other words, the model of risk compensation assumes that with higher exogenous measures, there's a larger cost of prevention by the individual. Why we don't find this very plausible in this case. And indeed, if you revisit the model, you find that if actually the exogenous measure sufficiently reduces the effort cost of the individual, then you should observe something like that we have in the data, that actually we find the opposite of risk compensation. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm looking forward to your questions.